Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. One of my favorite stories is a fable, an old Greek fable about a Greek galley that is making its way across from the island of Samos to Athens. And this is a galley, so it's not a ship powered by sails or powered by steam, but a ship powered by oarsmen, by 30, 40, 50 people working together, continuously plying the waves with their oars to the tune of a fife across the sea. And back in 500, 600 BC, whenever this story took place, this journey would have taken 2 to 3 days. But on the last day of this journey, there was a terrible storm. The wind started to howl. The waves were crashing over the bow of this boat and drenching rank upon rank of oarsmen. And all hope seemed lost. It seemed like they would founder. Some of the oarsmen stopped rowing and they started praying to Poseidon, praying for mercy that the storm would stop. The other half dropped their oars and started praying to Hades, saying, "Please, please treat me well in the afterlife. I hope you treat me well." And the captain of this galley yelled out, struggling to overcome the sound of the winds and the waves and the wailing of the crew, and said, "Pray if you wish, but please don't forget to row." Because there was no way they were going to make it in that last day of the journey and survive if every single one of them was not rowing. And this is good common sense, and it's something that, being here on dry land, not having to worry about drowning anytime in the near future, we can say is perfectly just and beyond any argument. And yet, if you were to listen to a certain individual who is getting a disproportionately large amount of airtime on certain 24-hour news networks, you would believe that our best hope is in wishing and praying that somehow the clock will turn back 50 years, that all of the manufacturing jobs that have either been replaced by automation or gone overseas will all of a sudden come back to this country, that a lot of the progress and a lot of the immigrants that have come will just kind of disappear, and things will be exactly as they were when things were supposedly great. Whatever manufactured history and past that was. But to quote Alexander Hamilton, this is something more fervently to be wished than realistically to be expected. Because, to quote the philosopher Bob Dylan, the times are a-changing, and they've always been changing, really. It used to be that jobs were so static, that you were so guaranteed to have the same job that your dad did, that when Alfred the Great set out to document everyone in his realm in England, that they gave people last names based off their occupation, because it was assumed your son's going to have that same job, his son's going to have that same job, and down through till doomsday, you're going to have that same occupation in your family. Hence we have names like Cobbler, like Smith, like Cooper, and Fletcher, and Thatcher, and so on. But today, there are jobs that weren't even imagined 50 years ago. And there are jobs that came about during the Industrial Revolution that simply don't exist. There aren't too many people shoveling coal into a furnace in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania anymore. It's just not there. And there are many jobs that will be happening that people are training for that don't even exist yet. And to quote the futurist Alvin Toffler, he said in the 1970s, a very, very smart man, he said that the illiterate of the future will not just be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Because where we once lived in a period where you were guaranteed to have the same job, and maybe your dad who worked in the Bethlehem steel mill would pass that job on to you, and you're guaranteed to have that job with the union, and you would have a pension from that after you retired, and your son would have that same job. Well, that security isn't there anymore, and times are changing. And we can choose to try and make things the way they once were, and effectively turn back the clock of progress, because as great as things may have been back in the old days, a lot of what we think that those times were like is a product of the soft, misty glow of nostalgia, which is a very wonderful but dangerous thing. But if we don't move with the change, if we don't continue to row our way through the technological winds and waves that will always pass over us, then we will founder. and will crash. And we are no more practical than those Greek sailors from thousands of years ago who dropped their oars and were praying to Poseidon and to Hades. And the real shame of this is that we have wonderful examples of people who did adapt to this change, of people who, in the face of a storm, continued to row. We have the tens of thousands of women, when their husbands and when their brothers and uncles and other male relatives went off to fight a war, they kept the factories going. We often forget that the product of our victory was the result of hard work of factories in the United States, because we were able to build 4 times as many tanks, twice as fast as the Germans. That we were able to make more shipping than the entire Japanese Navy had at the end of the war in 1 year in the Henry J. Kaiser shipyards on the east and west coast of the United States. People who kept on rowing, who didn't pray that someone would come and make all these things for them and bring us this victory over fascism and over, quite frankly, evil in the world. It came about because people started to row and continued to row and kept on rowing. And we have in this room examples of people who continued to row. Tony, for example, in her speech last week, overcoming the challenge of a main contact at a business that provided a lot of revenue for her company. And did she stop and founder and pray and wish that things couldn't be the way they were anymore? She kept on rowing, and she continued. And that is what we do as human beings. We continue and we thrive and we find a way and we adapt. Or Pat Hansen, who isn't here with us today, who through her very humorous story told us how she overcame being retired from the California State University system. And she was able to get some very, very funny stories out of it at the Concours d'Elegance during Carnegie. But that is an example of people who didn't stop, people who didn't drop their oars and continue to pray, people who kept on rowing. And now the time has come for us to row. One reason why I chose to become an operations research major at the Naval Postgraduate School is that I understand that even though I have the relative security of being in the military, that not all is certain in the world. That though I am certain that I'm going to be able to keep the job that I have for the time being, I'm also equally aware that members of the United Auto Workers Union in Detroit, Michigan had that same sense of certainty, that same sense of security in their jobs with General Motors, with Ford, with Chrysler, with the American Motor Company, with Oldsmobile. But that sometimes the wind and the waves have a way of overcoming us, and they have a way of changing our lives in a way that we least expect. And as our country changes demographically, as our country changes technologically, as our country changes culturally, things are going to change. Things with which we found security and hope and happiness will change, and it will be different. But I have faith. I have faith that even though our initial reaction, myself included, can be to gnash teeth, to hope, to pray, to wish, that in the end I have faith that we'll keep on rowing. And I'll keep on rowing as well.
Thank you, Madam Toastmaster. Toastmasters and welcome guests. And John, he went from a little baby icebreaker to this amazing speech. I will keep on rowing. This is a group of people that do keep on rowing. I think the fact that you did hit some objection you did hit the objective, which is to make us think, to inspire us, to get us thinking about that. But I don't want to go too far because I want the others to be able to have the opportunity to do that. However, you certainly did pick up some marvelous words. Wailing prayers, Poseidon won't help you if you don't row, relevant to the audience, your current political situation, but just wonderful. You hit so many different levels of wonderful things that brought us all in. But again, I don't want to mess that up. So Actually, we can use Tom. Have you got a gavel?
How long it's supposed to be?
Oh, a sentence, it's on here.
30 seconds.
30 seconds, okay, fine.
Okay.
Very
John, well-crafted speech, well-delivered, especially you had a lot of quotes in there that you didn't hesitate to pronounce perfectly and deliver with great humor, drama, and effect. I really loved your speech.
John, your projection and your tempo, the way you wove all of us, particularly me, I think you could have picked any topic and I would have been there. I was there from the get-go. I appreciate the topic and, you know, it was very well done.
Just read this. So how did you inspire me? Well, with your eloquent speaking, perfectly memorized quotes, your delicious and illustrative wordplay, loved it, mannerism, your charisma, your strength, and if anything, what could you have done to reach me more? I don't know. Kiss me? Perfect, perfectly done. Trajan?
Oh, sure, okay. Yeah, John, congratulations. It was very inspiring. I love the metaphor. You had me at the Greeks and because I love ancient history like that. One thing I think that might have, I would have liked to have heard a few more stories from your past where maybe you felt you faced some challenges and then had to keep rowing through it. You gave the one about the future. It would have been nice to have heard more about that, but again, very inspiring, wonderfully delivered. Thank you.
John, excellent speech. I put, for how you inspired me, your presence, your confidence. You really made me feel like everything was going to be okay. And in terms of how you could reach me more, maybe at the end, a question to think about how I can row better or longer. Thank you.
This is very short, so excellent, by the way. I just wanted to share that, I know this is the first time I've been here, but what I enjoyed about the speech, what inspired me, was your presence and your strong belief. He obviously had strong belief from the very beginning that kind of drawed us all in, and I enjoyed the stories and being able to visualize. So, good job. Very good.
John, at the first speech, your style, speaking style is very good. You are improving. Also, your voice, without speaking, without looking at notes, you are speaking very well. You are giving yourself to speech. I like that.
John, it's been my pleasure to watch you and listen to you from speech number 1 till now. What progress, if there ever was a perfect example of someone going through the CC manual and becoming a completely different speaker, better speaker, you are that example. Dynamic, no ahs, pausing, use of your body, use of your voice, outstanding. Excuse me.
John, I admire your good use of metaphor, your literary ability to use metaphors and descriptions in your language. That, I mean, it's a talent that you have that you take advantage of very well. One suggestion I have, I noticed a couple of times you tend to get political. In my recommendation, I like staying out of religion and politics myself, but I mean, you never know who you're going to shut down. I mean, so that would be my only recommendation.
John, outstanding speech. Just to add to everything which has already been said, I really like the way you incorporated personal stories from the audience into your speech. It's very inspiring by itself. And dwelling on what Michael has said, I hope 1 November I will have a chance to promote.
What a vibrant example of a round robin. John, since we're doing things backwards, please come to the dais, to the lectern.